What's up, everybody, and welcome. We are Wartorn Creative. I'm Brad, joined by Gavin and Jared. We're going to be talking about the new stuff that's coming out in 8th edition and just speculations, what we know, what we think is going to happen and everything. So to kick this off, we've got unit profiles. So what are some of the major changes that are coming through and differences in unit profiles that we're going to see in 8th edition versus what we're used to right now?
Well, as you can see on the charts that they pushed out in their articles, they've completely reworked on how units moved. Instead of having static, it's set in the rules, it's actually set by the unit. And another thing that we noticed for them is that ballistic skill and weapon skill essentially was the chart itself was thrown out the window.
Okay.
And they've introduced this just straightforward, just need this dice roll to hit, 3+ for Space Marines.
Okay. So movement used to be like a unit type, like infantry or jump and everything like that, but now it's going to be a specific, just like unit type, more or less.
It allows for a lot more, I guess, variation without having to add more unit types. So instead of being stuck with knowing 12 different rules, if you have a very varied army, all of a sudden you just need to know your unit profiles for what you're taking, and that's really all. And just makes it easier.
So initiative, gone, thrown out the window.
Out.
So with that gone, does that affect anything with the unit profiles? Like, I guess you could say, is it good or is it bad?
I consider it good because with initiative being gone, it's one less stat to worry about, and it throws out this whole step-through process in the combat phase.
Okay.
Right.
And there are other things that Games Workshop brought up in terms of like charging and things like that that influence who hits first, kind of situations.
Okay.
But no, that's pretty straightforward with why they threw that out. It's just less work to do for the player.
So when you talked about weapon and ballistic skill, what are the differences there? How is it, a flat number? You said, it's a flat number you have to roll versus having to roll against something else. So kind of give me the rundown. What are the pros and cons of just having to roll a flat number versus how it is currently?
The way it is currently all the way up to 7th edition is that it's all done by these set numbers that most players know. And the basic calculation that people would take from that is, in order to figure out what you needed to roll to hit, whether it was shooting, mainly shooting in this specific, is that you take the ballistic skill and subtract 7 by that number, and that was the dice roll. And to me, that feels really awkward, and that was an esoteric thing that people had to figure out versus looking at their scaling chart that they had in the rule book. And the way they're doing it now for 8th is way more straightforward and easier to pick up.
So easier to pick up. So does that mean that explaining the game to new people, friends, getting more people involved, picking up a new army, new units as they come out, it's easier to then adapt to playing and get more people involved and everything like that, rather than having to know a million numbers? It's like, hey, you need to know these 5 things because that's the 5 units you're playing.
Yeah, the less charts that a new player has to, or any player has to memorize, the better it's going to be. Games are going to start going a lot easier because you're not going to have to be like, oh, wait, I haven't used this in a while. I need to check this chart or something like that. It's just right there, all right there on your unit profile. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for you now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I personally run into that a lot when you're playing, and it's like, oh, I haven't played this unit yet or this character yet. Let me go dig through all these pages and all these rules, and then it's like 10 minutes later, oh, I found it. Here's what it does. Yeah. So it definitely would help cut down a lot of time and make it easier for everybody.
And I can tell you from experience of teaching new players that I no longer will have to do that explanation of, oh, you got to calculate this in order to be able to do that. It's like, just look on the profile. You can see exactly what your unit's capable of doing in terms of being able to hit a target, and it just goes from there.
So one of the biggest changes, I think, which is crazy, this helps me a ton because it's something I always run into. I never run a list where I have very high strength weapons to penetrate armor, of 13, 14 and stuff like that. So no more armor values. Wounds coming out like crazy. So give me the lowdown on all this.
So I'm an Age of Sigmar player as well. So I'm kind of used to this. This is new for static, for people who latched on to 40k, not so much fantasy. This concept of throwing out armor values is, again, that trims down the rules a lot, because then you don't have to worry about calculations of glancing or penetrations. Armor bane goes out the window. A tank hunter will likely go out the window if not changed. And then the entire vehicle damage table is gone. Like, that's no longer a problem. We don't have to worry about keeping track of weapons destroyed, immobilization results, whether or not things are stunned or shaken. We don't have to worry about things exploding.
There's going to be a lot of vehicle damage dice that are just going to be thrown out. And I feel sad for them.
It's great for me.
So you think we're going to get some really cool wound dice with having like these really high number wounds? Like we're going to have to go, we're going to have to go past 6 and 9 and everything like that.
I think D20 is going to be pretty standard.
Well, but we've also noticed that they did put out wound counters that are like in a D12 format.
Okay.
That came out before this, and a lot of people are like, oh, it's just for Age of Sigmar. And something to keep track of for like the super heavies that have like anything above 6 hull points.
Yes.
But now it's something that we can definitely use for the vehicles now, because that was very clear cut when they introduced when they showed the Dreadnought profile, and he's no longer a vehicle. He's actually treated every vehicle is treated essentially as a monstrous creature.
Yeah.
And as such, they have these really high toughness values. Like, from our perspective, toughness 7 is ridiculous.
Right.
You know, the next like toughest thing is like a Wraith Knight.
Yeah, it's tough. Or any Wraith construct is toughness 8. And
yeah.
I know personally from playing them, not fun. not a fun thing. But now we have Dreadnoughts. What are they? Toughness 7 or toughness 8?
Toughness 7 with I believe 8 wounds.
As a Tyranid player, like anything above 6 is really exciting, but also makes me very jealous.
Yes.
So
well,
it'll be exciting to see how what changes.
Yeah, we haven't seen the Tyranid profiles. I imagine they are going to get a nice beefy bump in wounds. And again, like all the vehicles, as we've seen on the Dreadnought profile, has an armor save as well. And that'll play a lot into weapon profiles and things like that when we start looking at the AP values that they've introduced, which behave differently.
So now with these changes, how does this affect like gameplay, or I guess strategic wise? Like if you play vehicles a lot, or vice versa, you're playing against vehicles, how does it help you playing against them? How does it help you if you are them, or hurt you? You know, these players that are used to having this armor to protect them, and now it's like, okay, well now I only have wounds. Do they have to play a completely different type of style?
I don't. I think the style that they'll have to play is a little more forward, because 7th edition vehicles, for the most part, clear across the board, with the exception of like a Land Raider or heavier, had 3 hull points.
Right.
And we had the vehicle damage table. So like it was either you got 3 glances and you're done,
or you got 1 shot.
Or you got 1 shot.
Right.
And because of that, everybody dumped their points in the dozer blades and were hugging cover and shooting flat outing and trying to get to where they wanted to be and not really doing anything. You know,
Right.
The transports were literally just mobile pillboxes, for the most part, that just went from cover to cover, and that's not interesting. So when I hope to see like rhinos to have like 8 wounds with like maybe a 4-up or a 5-up, you adjust accordingly.
We're going to see probably some more aggressive playstyles from armor players, which is going to be exciting because, you know, the way you imagine 40k on this the tabletop battlefield, you don't like thinking about an army flush with armor and tanks to be like playing cat and mouse with a bunch of infantry.
Right.
They should be kind of like barreling forward and blasting your opponent off the table. And I think we're going to probably see a lot more playstyles like that.
Definitely think I'll see more guard players being less static gun lines.
Yeah.
Because they're just afraid to get blown up.
Yeah.
You know, and that's no longer a thing.
So to kind of wrap up, like whole unit profiles and everything like that, there's a word that gets thrown around a little bit. Want to get your guys' thoughts on it. So command points. What do you think they're going to do or be before we find out?
Well, a little bit of context. Command points are these side like points that you can use and spend that you generate from your force organization, like your force composition. And they said they had like 15, and in that stream they showed maybe 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 3. Based on like, and how heavier you focused, and the whole like reward of theming is that the heavier you're focused on a certain faction, the more command points you'd get. Like I think like they cited from like 3 to 9.
I think we can imagine. I imagine we're going to be seeing with new codexes, we're going to see army-specific organizations with command points, bonuses, and possibly even command points that can be used, like uses for those command points that are thematic to the armies. Because right now we know of at least one use for command points. We haven't been told all of them, which is just changing the charge order or the hit order during charges. We've been told that we've got a lot of other options coming out, and I think it opens up a lot of viable options for their design team to really explore what the game type is or what the play type is for each army, allowing you to spend command points on very thematic kind of abilities in your army.
And one of the things I'm really interested about, because as you said, it can influence the who strikes in the combat phase, as one of the examples they brought up. That could also introduce factors that no longer will have to require a dice roll to figure out what happens. Like, I would like to see if reserves are still a thing, maybe command points would be like, all right, that thing, I'm spending a command point, so this guy can come in this turn.
Yeah, that'd be very cool.
I also think what's worth mentioning is that you are limited to one command point per phase. So we'll see how that factors into how these command points can be spent. But I imagine we're going to have multiple uses for command points per phase. So if it's I imagine it's going to be a little more in depth than a reroll, but we'll see what we can do with them.
And then most likely it's you use it, you lose it type of scenario where you have that many. Once you use it, it's gone. You ain't getting it back. It's not going to regen.
Yeah, and I expect that a lot of people will come up with their stratagems on like how they can use it throughout the game, as opposed to being like impulsive with it.
Right.
You know, or overly conservative. They'll start planning out, you know, and start devising strategies for it.
So I think there's a lot of really good things, really unique things coming out just on unit profiles. Just overall positives and negatives. Are you excited for it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I don't like saying the word, but it normalizes a lot of the work that everybody has to do when they're looking at interacting with their own army versus interacting with other people's armies. It becomes way more straightforward, way more streamlined, and easier to pick up and more accessible, which I think is good and healthy for the game.
So that does it here at Wartorn Creative. That's unit profiles. We're speculating and giving our opinions for 8th edition for Warhammer 40k. We're going to be coming out with more content throughout the week. Make sure you like this video, subscribe, and comment below if you guys want to see any other content or anything else. Let us know, and we'll try to bring that to you.